My name is Emma Neve, and I'm an 8th grade English teacher at John F. Kennedy Middle School. And I'm really fortunate that the Suffolk Education Foundation fully funded my grant for this school year for Scholastic Scope magazines. Scholastic Scope is a magazine for the classroom for middle school age students that uses interesting articles for students to teach a variety of English language arts skills. I was really hesitant when SEF asked me to apply for this again because none of us knew at that point what this school year was going to look like. Um, but I did it anyway because my students love these magazines. And so we've been really fortunate this school year to still be able to use these because everything that is in these physical magazines is accessible online. And so we've still been able to read paired passages and flash fiction and short stories and poems. And furthermore, Scope has really stepped up their game when it comes to providing for teachers. For every piece of text that is in these magazines, they provide pre-made activities that all teachers have to do is just add them to their Google Drive and make whatever adjustments they need before assigning them to students. And we all know that our workload has increased dramatically this school year. And it has really been such a relief to just, all I have to do is pick the story or the article that I want to read and make the adjustments to match our standards of learning and assign it to students. And my kids have loved it. We have gotten to do some really cool activities. We have read about the stinky history of hygiene, which has been great. We have been scared senseless by the suspense of a scary short story. And we have even flexed our acting muscles by performing a few plays online. And all the while we're having this fun, my kids are learning and reinforcing really crucial reading and writing skills. And so I'm incredibly grateful to the Suffolk Education Foundation for funding my grant. And I definitely encourage any of my colleagues here in Suffolk, if there is a project that you really want to do in your virtual or your physical classroom, apply for it because you never know how it could pan out for both you and your students.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to this evening's Can We Talk webinar, Now Hiring, advice for career seekers. We hope you guys have enjoyed this webinar series, and we are very excited about our panel here tonight, and we hope everybody will actively participate. We invite you to put your questions in the chat box. We've got some prepared questions for our panel tonight, and hopefully they will get into some vigorous discussion. But let me just go ahead and do some of our acknowledgments as we get into the webinar, and then I'll introduce our panelists. We're hoping, as always, are addressing a need for our school's community, as we've done in the past with the teacher store, the cyber kits that we issued at the beginning of the school year, and our instructional grants and scholarships. It's through the support of the community that we are able to support these initiatives, and I would like to thank our many sponsors, especially our annual sponsor, RRMM Architects, and their partners, and our presenting sponsor, Newport News Shipbuilding. The community can support these initiatives and our staff and students through our annual school and community campaign. Please consider going to SuffolkEducationFoundation.org and making a donation. So let me go ahead and introduce our presenters for this evening. So Libby Westley is the Director of Career Planning at Christopher Newport University. She's worked in career development roles in higher education for more than 20 years. She loves empowering students to realize the value of what they bring as candidates for internships, jobs, and graduate programs. Libby wants everyone to live by the rule, you get jobs by talking to people, and prepare students to embrace that strategy. Can you wave to us all, Libby? Richard Chang is the owner of Suffolk Executive Offices. He has a passion for helping others around him and to create a community of like-minded people working towards a common goal, where he assists entrepreneurs with ideas, collaboration, and networking. In 2019, he founded the Suffolk Executive Offices Foundation, a 501c3 nonprofit impact organization, and has done the young entrepreneurs out at the Hilton Garden Inn. Hopefully he'll get back to that next year. Richard, can you wave to us? And then Katie is the district vice president of the YMCA of Southampton Roads, overseeing the operations of 13 centers from South Boston to the Eastern Shore. Her responsibilities include providing leadership and development to 1,200 plus staff members, board engagement, and volunteer development, philanthropic goals of over $1.2 million, community involvement, member engagement, and facilities management. Katie, can you wave to us all this evening? So, and then missing this evening is Dan Cran, who we promised to have here this evening. He is the operator of Chick-fil-A Harbor View. He had a personal emergency that popped up, and so he's not going to be able to join us this evening. But he did want me to let everybody know that Chick-fil-A Harbor View is hiring. So if you're interested and you're looking for something, please follow all the appropriate links on Chick-fil-A to apply for a position there. So that being said, I know we've got some presentations and everything that you guys want to talk about, but I want to kind of start with a very broad question, and then we can narrow it down a little bit more. But what is probably the best career advice that you've either given or have received to candidates or as a candidate? And anybody can jump in on that.
Well, personally, I think that the best career advice I've ever received is to find an amazing mentor. And I was very fortunate. I unintentionally found an amazing mentor very early in my career. My first CEO was a phenomenal leader, a phenomenal staff developer, and to this day is someone who I look to as a mentor. And that is the advice that I give a lot of our staff and my peers, is that to have that person that can give you perspective, that can give you consultation, that can give you advice, and sometimes from a third-party perspective. They're not directly involved in supervising you necessarily or being your friend. It is a mentor-mentee relationship. My career would not be where it is today without that person, and I am very thankful for him. His name is Bob Wanick back in Chicago, and like I mentioned, I wouldn't be where I am today without his guidance and support.
Anyone else want to chime in?
Well, I think for me, the best advice I had was take risk. Yeah, opportunity opens up. Yeah, especially for young kids today out of high school. And I'm always hesitant. I'm an introvert, and I'm always scared to volunteer first. But I had a mentor of mine, like a mentor, a teacher of mine that said, Richard, hey, what do you have to lose? Yeah, do the job. And I think that was the biggest approach. By taking the first step, it made it easier for the second step. Yeah, other opportunities to open up the door. So just don't be afraid. Yeah, and don't be afraid to make mistakes. That's the biggest thing. Yeah, learn from your mistakes. So that was my biggest step from somebody I consider a mentor that helped me and gave me a lot of advice.
Libby, you're on mute.
I think from my perspective, working with students, you have to believe in yourself. So you have to believe that you have the skills and talent to be able to go after what you're going for. Because when you use language like, well, I don't really have any experience, then you're giving whoever you're talking to permission to not acknowledge your experience. And, you know, as human beings, we often want to mimic the behavior of the person across from us. So I was working with a a non-traditional student, and she had stopped out of the workforce for a bit. That's the language she used. Like she wasn't working anymore. She wanted to go into being a police officer, but she was actually always working in a restaurant and in a bar. And so, her observation skills were keen, but she dismissed that experience and didn't connect it to what it was going for. And so I found myself doing that, not because I believed it, but because that's the language that she led with. So, when I stopped myself and said, okay, so do you see what I've done here? And so the risk is that others that you're talking to might be doing the same thing. So, don't diminish your experience. Always start with what you've got and let your listener decide if that's good enough or not. But I find that as a listener, I'm not that difficult to convince, but I do need to hear the case.
So kind of going off of Libby's comment there, is there one over, so let's be somewhat tactful and politically correct, but is there one great opportunity that you see with applicants today that maybe old school applicants or some characteristics or traits that you haven't seen for a while that you would like candidates to have today? Am I articulating myself well, or am I just bouncing around it too much? What do candidates today, what's a challenge that they all walk in with? Is it that they're looking at their phones from the moment they're walking in front of you? Is it that they don't know how to professionally dress or groom? Is there anything that stands out that you think any candidate needs to pay attention to?
So I think that technological savviness is definitely something that is a pro and a con. Obviously, there are trainings, there are certifications, there are so many things that we do online now, meetings, interviews. So much is done technologically, but there is still a finesse of having those interpersonal skills and knowing when to use them. Oftentimes now I run into opportunities where I could have had a one-on-one conversation with someone. Someone could have just picked up the phone, but they choose to text me or they choose to put it in an email form. And knowing and differentiating when to do those things, I think, is something that is really important, especially for people just coming into their career. Sometimes we say it's easier to just put it in an email or put it in a text. But that interpersonal relationship is so important. And especially in the job field that I'm in, relationships are everything. And so knowing when to use that technology and when not to is very important. Also knowing when to put the phone down and when to really focus in on the person and listen and hear what they're saying, rather than having your nose in your phone and saying, yeah, I hear you. Really giving that attention, I think, is very important. So pro and con, I can definitely see that.
Well, Patrick, I think there's old school thinking and there's new school thinking. There's something, it's funny when you asked me to do this webinar, I had this discussion. I think that most today's employees, they think that the boss pays them. That's where the paycheck comes from. And I think the old school way, the old school is like, no, the boss doesn't really pay me. It's actually the customer that pays me. And I think I did a slide for you about the whole schematics thing, because actually I did another class with a bunch of young kids. They would show up for work and they say, hey, I'm working, but they're on their phone texting. And I would make a comment to them. I said, listen, you're here at work, but you're not working yet. Working is actually working for the business, adding value for the business. So, and then when you asked me to do the presentation, I was trying to explain to them that you can pull the slide up a little bit, the whole slide. The question I asked them was like, he pulled the slide up. It says, who pays?
Give me just a second. I'm going to bring it up for you here.
Okay. The question I asked, it was like that. Who pays you as an employee? and there's like A, B, C, and D, and it's interesting how the kids would answer that question. Yeah, and
Can you see it?
if you go to the next slide,
Sure.
yes, yeah. The next slide, Patrick. The second one.
Is it?
So I have a friend of mine.
Back?
What's that? Forward. Just hit the next page. I have a friend of mine who's opening up a coffee shop, and he hired all these young kids out of college, and they're texting they're on the phone texting. I said, well, there's things you can do, as an employee, that part you can play. And there was a pile of trash. He hasn't opened up. There's a pile of trash in the middle of the walkway, and everybody's walking over this trash. And I'm observing this thing from the side. And I told my buddy of mine, I said, I wonder if someone could take an initiative to pick up the trash. It may not be what's so-called their job description. So, and then the question I asked these young kids was like, who pay you guys? This boss pays me. But the question is, you go to the next slide, Patrick.
Hold on. I guess you're not seeing the same thing I'm seeing here.
No, let me see. Actually, it's who pays you as an employee? Like A, B, C, and D. So okay. That's the question I posed to them, and a lot of them say, "Hey, the boss pays me." Yeah, and I said incorrectly. Really, the boss doesn't pay you. It's actually the customer pays you. Now, if you go to the next slide, I'll try to skip forward to the fourth slide.
Are you seeing that?
Yeah, I see the yeah.
It says it starts with the customer.
Yeah, skip to that next slide. I'm gonna skip that real quick.
Hold on. Are you seeing all the arrows pop up?
No, yeah, I think it's yeah.
Okay, hold on. Bear with me. Technology savviness, as you said.
So I'll just continue on. Really, the customer pays your product and services and pays for cash for the product. It goes into your register, and people think, well, the boss pays me, but they don't understand the other part. The boss is actually a steward of the money that comes in for the product and services they pay. So the boss has to make sure it pays their expenses. Yeah, the guy pays rent, utilities, insurance, his taxes, supplies, the payroll, and then what's left over. It was the correct slide there. So what's left over is actually part of your paycheck. So that goes to your employee's pocket. Now, people, they don't see the side of the expenses that the employer pays them. And it's like, oh, I don't have to work. I don't do these things. But as I explained to these young adults, I'm like, kids, I said, listen, you're the employee. You have to bring in the customer experience for them to come back to your store, your shop, to buy your products and services. Customers comes first. It's not you as the employee. And then you have to be friendly with them, with the customer, with a smile on your face. And then having a happy client comes back, and guess what? You get more customer, and that's how the cash flow works that way. So if the employees it's not doing their job, the boss can't stay open. So that's the whole key of being I think maybe I'm trying to generalize it, but some of the kids, they don't see that far ahead in the business aspect of it, that you are the key to have a successful business for the boss. So if you see that whole chain, it comes back. So more customer comes in, more money comes in register. Guess what? When you ask for a raise, you say, well, listen, Mr. Boss, this is the value I brought in. I've done this and this and this, and you have seen your profit margin increase by 10%. That's a great reason to ask your employer for a raise. Now, if the profit margin is so minimal and you're not improving the business, and asking for a raise is not going to work. So that's the whole, I think, mentality. You have to understand that listen, the more customers I bring in, more satisfied customers that keep coming to the door, and that's where you can ask for a raise. It's not like, hey, I've been here for a year, I'm here at work, yeah, I want a raise. Here's my time frame. But if you can talk to your boss and say, listen, what can I do? Yeah, what time frame that I can get a raise? And boss say, listen, if we can reach our profit margin up to like 20% in the next 6 months, you just draw a line in the sand with your boss. Listen, in the next 6 months, if I can bring this profit margin up to this 20-30%. Hey, there's your raise. Instead of waiting for 1 year, your time frame, if you could bring that value in as an employee, and that's where entrepreneurship comes in. Because you take an initiative, you're not stepping over the trash. You pick it up, cleaning it up, make sure that the place is presentable. Make sure you increase that profit margin as customers keep coming through the door. So that's the whole concept. I think the old school thinking and the new school thinking is different. So you got to put down your phone and be interactive with the customer, engage with the business itself, learn from your boss, because maybe you want to be a boss one day, and then you learn through the whole process. So I think that's the difference, in my personal opinion, what I've seen in young adults today.
So I'm going to bring a little, on Dan's behalf, some extra at Kathy. One of the things that he always looked for in good employees or employees he kept was employees who treated the business like it was their own.
Yes.
And, so, just to use that. Libby, is there anything that you want to add to that conversation?
Sure. I think maybe I have 4 little things there. So going off of computer skills, which are technology skills, I think some of my, some ways that candidates can set themselves apart is if they know how to do things in Excel. And these are pretty high end. Like I find that even people who've worked in the field don't know. So this is like VLOOKUP, knowing how to do VLOOKUP is really good, knowing how to use pivot tables and to be able to sort and filter. I think those are skills that will serve you in whatever positions you go in, very concrete, tangible ones. I'm also a huge fan of Microsoft Mail Merge, like Mail Merge, love it, makes everything easy, especially when you're trying to, maybe formulate emails that need to have very specific things. Because I'm terrible about like the day of the week, Wednesday, March 22nd is a Tuesday. I get it wrong every time. So Mail Merge kind of helps me do that. So I think those skills are important. I think also these are not as, specific as Microsoft skills, but knowing when to ask questions. I think asking questions is really important, but I also think it's important to like check yourself and could you find the answer to that question with a little bit of, research versus asking somebody the first time you have it. So I know sometimes when we're working with our interns, we have to train them to like try to find the answer first. Maybe don't spend hours doing it, but look first and then ask. And don't be afraid to ask the questions. I think another thing that's a hallmark, at least of how the staff in my office works, like no task is too big or too small. So, if you see something, then do something about it or find somebody who can help get that done. So there's a certain amount of being able to take initiative and make things happen. So those would be a couple of things from my perspective.
Richard, did you have something to add? You look like you wanted to. Okay.
No, I agree with Libby. Yeah.
Okay. So, the questions about the interview are going to seem to be jumping up. So I'm going to use Katie's question here about not only what are some things that employers look for when somebody comes to an interview, but as well, when does the actual interview start?
Absolutely. So a lot of people think that the interview starts when you're sitting across the desk from the hiring manager and they start asking you questions. For me, that's not the case. And for my staff, that's not the case. The interview starts really when I look at your resume and I make that initial phone call to set up the interview. I am listening to your voicemail if I get your voicemail and hearing how professional that voicemail message sounds. I am listening to how you answer the phone, how professional you sound on the phone, and your demeanor while we're talking. I also am looking for interaction. So when you do come in for your interview, how do you interact with our front desk staff? How do you interact with the members? Before you ever meet me, what are you like personally with those people? How do you interface with them? And then it does come down to the interview of, I'm looking for the skills, of course, but I can teach a lot of those skills. A lot of those things I can teach you to do. I could even teach you to be a lifeguard. You know, I can get you that certification if you don't have it. I could teach you to be a child care director, but I can't teach you the personality, and I can't teach you those people skills, and I can't teach you necessarily all those little pieces of the puzzle that fit together with our team, how to be a team player, how to work as a team, how to function as a team. So I'm looking at those skills as well as the technical skills. You know, I think that it's really important to be yourself during the interview. That is essential. You know, I don't think in the long run it behooves you by any means to try to be someone that you're not. Be open, be honest, present yourself well. Obviously, if you have skills and experience and things that you need to shine, tell the interviewee that, or the interviewer that. But at the same time, don't embellish to the point of untruths or things that just aren't you, because we want to get to know the real you. In the long run, if you turn out not to be the person that you interviewed, it might not fit. It might not be a good fit. So what I want to do is always set that person up for success. And that starts during that interview process.
Anybody else want to chime in?
Well, I'll say, I think there are a couple of things people can do as they're getting ready. My favorite question to ask people as I'm preparing them for their interviews is, tell me 3 things that you're proud of. And so when I first start the conversation, this is outside of a formal interview process. It's more about prepping students as they're getting ready for interviews. I just want to hear what they say. And sometimes when I ask that question, tell me 3 things you're proud of, people will say, well, I'm proud of relationships that I've built. And so that's great. Perhaps when you told me that, you were thinking about your family, your friends, your significant other. But I bet you're also paying attention to relationships. That's probably a part of how you operate in the world. So then think about clubs and organizations you're a part of, how you've been involved in class projects, how you were in jobs or internships, and describe your interactions that you had with different people there, so that people have, when you're responding to an interview question, you're giving an example that they can write down and recreate you when you're not sitting across the table from your interviewers. So I think what are 3 things you're proud of? Another thing I hear sometimes, they'll be like, well, I got into CNU. And so, you know, I'll ask them a little more about that. And so it turns out that that was a goal that they had set, you know, maybe since they were a freshman, they wanted to get into CNU. And so perhaps they're a goal setter or achiever. So then when they introduce themselves and their experiences, then, you know, talk about goals that were set for them, either in clubs and organizations or that they set as leaders of those organizations, and how they achieved them, so that people can kind of get to know the themes of how they operate. So tell me about yourself, or tell me 3 things you're proud of, I think is a great way to kind of figure out what makes you tick. And then, because it's your job as the candidate to know what makes you tick, and then be able to convey that in a way that whoever you're talking to is going to understand. The other thing that I tell people to do, and there's a trick to this, it's harder than it seems, I think, but you know, as you get ready for an interview, imagine that you're Katie hiring for her vacancy, and so what questions is she going to ask in order to make sure that her candidate has what she needs to do? Because if you can anticipate what questions the interviewer is going to have, then you can practice answering them. And that practice is so important. I don't know, in the Libby world, sometimes the first time I tell a story, it's like everything that happened that morning, what I had for breakfast, blah, blah, blah. Like there's a lot of details that might come out that are not so critical to the question. But if I tell the story 5 times, it becomes much more concise, and I'm able to get to the key points quickly. And so that's, as a candidate, you need to be able to answer the question thoroughly and specifically with examples that can be remembered and brought back to life later without going on in a lot of detail. So that would be a second of my thing. Try to anticipate questions that you're going to be asked and then practice those answers.
Libby, can I piggyback off that just a little bit? I love that. And I'd love to add that I think doing your research is so important. So anticipating those questions is a piece of that. I think the other piece is doing your homework, knowing the product, knowing the company, knowing the organization, knowing, you know, exactly not just the job description, but a little bit more about the position itself, and even knowing about the interviewer. You know, do your research on that interviewer. I had an interviewee at one point who said, I believe you were an aquatics director at one time in your career, weren't you? And I thought, darn, this person really wanted this job because they did their research. They knew a lot about the YMCA and they knew about the career path and how to get that position. So doing your research is very important, and anticipating those questions that go along with that. I think that's great.
So I'm going to piggyback off that a little bit more and make this also to our scholarship applicants, or, you know, those in high school that plan on applying for scholarships. You know, there's nothing like journaling and being able just to document some details of some of those better events or those crazy days in your life that can be part of a great story later in life. And, you know, I remember when I was a hiring manager, some of the conversations that I got into with people was, don't assume that I saw everything on your resume. Yes, I read your resume, but that doesn't mean that I paid attention to what you thought I needed to pay attention to. And a great way to bang that out is to tell a story that I'm going to remember. Whether it's, you know, about your Eagle Scout project or your trip to Europe or getting into college or whatever those may be, or a great mentor that you had. But telling me a story that makes you stand out a lot in conjunction with whatever documentation I have in front of you, really was the difference in the people who I hired. And as you said, Katie, I can teach a lot of skills, but the ability to entrance me with a story was one of those characteristics that I always looked for as a hiring manager.
I remember my first job, honesty was the thing that my parents told me. And it's funny because when I applied for the job, I was totally honest. I said, listen, I don't know anything about electrical work. And I said, give me a shot, give me a chance. I'm not going to lie to you. I'm a hard worker. And I could tell by the body language, they weren't going for that. So, especially for a young adult. So what I did was I said, listen, how if I work for you for 1 month for free and see if I could fit in this position or not. So I did the job for 30 days for free, and I proved to them that I can do the work, and they trained me. And I went through an apprenticeship program after that for free. They paid for the entire thing. So being honest and know what your strengths are. I think my strength was really, you know, working hard, and I proved to them I can do that. But being honest, not lying or saying, hey, I can do this. I said I had no idea how to do this, but I'm willing to learn. And that's how I got my first job.
So as we're talking about interviewing and when the interview starts, a bunch of questions have popped up about social media. So I'll let you guys respond to that. And then I know, Libby, you want to do a little bit of a presentation on LinkedIn. So we'll kind of segue into that. But we'll start with the social media discussion. How often is social media researched? How much does social media influence decision making as far as hiring goes? You guys share.
Well, I
Or
feel
I
like
can
there's,
start.
I mean,
Go
I
ahead.
don't know. I'm not an HR person. I'm in career planning. My job is to prepare students. And so I do think there are some HR kind of guidelines that maybe, I don't know. But I tell students to, look up who their interviewers are going to be and expect that the person who's interviewing them or somebody on the interview side of the house somewhere is going to be looking at their social media to see if there's anything there. And so, like compromising pictures, that's a huge red flag. But even comments about like previous employers, or perceptions of other people that are negative is also can be a deal breaker. And so if it's not the hiring manager that's looking up, if it's not somebody in the HR department, it could be somebody else somewhere in the organization who is going to be looking up information, and that could very likely get to the hiring manager. And that could come out in the interview questions, or it could come out in kind of like reference checks later, like if they see somebody isn't a hard worker or sounds like they're kind of lazy, then if it gets to the reference check, that might be something that the person wants to evaluate and see if that's really true or not. So there's no, and if it's on the internet, it's on the internet. You can have your settings to private, but you just don't know who might still have access to that. So, if I'm not friends with you on Facebook, but Patrick's friends with you on Facebook, then Patrick might be looking at your Facebook profile and showing me what it is. So even though I couldn't access it myself, other people might be able to. So I think you just have to be very cautious with how you're using social media and making sure there's no negative images there.
And I will share that it's been greater than 10 years since I was hired by anybody. But in my first day paperwork, there was actually a social media policy, and that was a decade ago. And I can only imagine what they're like now. But I know lots of organizations, have created social media policies to explain that, your social media can influence your employment status. But guys, you all want to add to that, or?
During the actual hiring process, we do not use social media at the YMCA. However, to the point you just made, we do have a policy in our employee handbook. And once you are hired, if you associate yourself with the YMCA on your social media, that you need to be conscientious of what you put on it.
Yeah, it's funny. I don't do that, but for my nonprofit, when I ask people to donate to my organization, my nonprofit, and they look at my social media and say, hey, I did some background research. I don't see anything that's inappropriate, but they're really not investing into my nonprofit. They're actually investing, donating money to me as a person. Because I mean, they can donate money to any organization they want to, but if I'm likable, yeah, and I present well, they donate, yeah, they strike a check, yeah, which is good about that. So having a good social media, which I think it's a clean one, like Libby was saying, I think it helps in all aspect of life, not just a job interview, but other things, college applicant, some other stuff, you're dating some person, the parents are going to check it out. So I mean, those are things you got to be aware of too.
So Libby, I brought up LinkedIn for you, and you can provide me with whatever direction you want to.
Okay, well, I love LinkedIn. It's one of my favorite career resources of all time. And sometimes, high school students may not have a profile on LinkedIn, but parents might. And so I think it can be useful in a couple of different ways. One thing I think that as parents are researching universities for their students, and students are, perhaps with them when they're doing that, checking out to see where alums of those universities are working, what kinds of jobs do they have. So I don't know, do you want to put in James Madison, or do you want to put in Christopher Newport? I know JMU's Patrick's alma mater. Might be mine too. But I work at CNU, so I have strong feelings about that place as well. But okay, so we're looking for the school page. So if you see across the top of the screen, it says people, posts, groups, companies, jobs, schools. So click on that schools button there. And then go ahead and click on the school again. So this will take us to the school page for JMU. And then it says home, about, post, jobs, alumni. So if you click on the alumni there, And so this says there's 116,000 alums. So you see where they live. So if you're looking to see if there are any JMU alums in this area, then you would probably scroll down. You'll see some Norfolk Hampton roads, but you can also see where they work. So these are the largest, the employers that have the most JMU grads working there. If you go up to the top again, so we've got where they live, just down a little bit more, where they live, where they work. If you click on that next button here, then my favorite part, you see what they studied. So, if you or your student are thinking about psychology for a major, then you can click on psychology. And so you can see what the alums of JMU who majored in psychology are doing. And so looking to see what was the first job they had out, or maybe what was their internship while they were a student at JMU, what they do after that. So it can give students ideas of career paths, like what do I do with a psychology major? But it can also give you like ideas of organizations. So I don't know if you want to scroll down and click on a profile that catches your attention, Patrick. Chief Visionary Officer.
Yep. It was the title that kind of caught me.
Sure, yeah. Well, that's what I love about LinkedIn. This is why I've reached my search capacity on my personal account. So if you scroll down, I always scroll down to the bottom to see when they graduated and what they studied. So we already have some ideas of what this person studied. 3 more educational experiences. Whew. All right. Looks like they might not have graduated, huh? They might have transferred. I don't know. Anyway, scroll up a little bit more. So, and if you click on any of the links, like if you were to click on the logo next to research technician, that's going to take you to the company page for that organization. And so, students, if you have jobs that you're looking at with employers, you can go to the company page for that organization. And you see it says home about post jobs people. So if you click on the people link there, you can see the names of people and the titles of people who are working at the organization. So, if you've always wanted to be in film and television and you're looking at, the Wavy channel, you can see kind of like what are the titles of the people that work there. So if, you wanted to work at the Massachusetts General Hospital, this might give you an idea of job titles. The other thing is, like, if you have an interview coming up, if you can find your person on LinkedIn, as Katie said, look through their background and see what they're doing, then that will also help you prepare. So I like using LinkedIn to research where do alums go of schools that you might be considering. Looking up for Katie there. Yeah.
Yeah, you're probably not going to find much.
But I found that you
Not a
found that
lot of
you were
Katie
the
Bird this week.
aquatic director. You don't have a LinkedIn? You do.
I don't.
You don't? Really? Man,
Oh,
everyone
Libby
should have
got the case
LinkedIn.
now.
I
Man,
did
this
choose
is rough.
not to.
And the other thing is, like, the more people that people are connected to, the more results they're going to be able to see in LinkedIn. So, connecting with coworkers, connecting with professors, connecting with friends' parents, these things are all good.
You didn't have much on yours either, Ricky.
No, I put enough, just enough to be there, just to ask questions. Same thing with my Facebook and other social media, but yeah, I don't put anything personal anywhere on social media. Just enough what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Remember, I'm an introvert, so I could keep it to myself. Yeah.
Okay, so I got to take a quick pause and just kind of acknowledge a few more of our people, and then we'll come back. If you're enjoying this series, there's going to be more opportunities to be a part of the Suffolk Education Foundation. On May 26th, we are having our annual Gala for the Arts. Not sure if it's going to be virtual, in person, or both, but we hope to have some information about that in the next couple weeks. On October 29th, we have our annual golf tournament out at Sleepy Hole, and we hope you guys can join us for that as well. We had that this past year. It was lots of fun. Probably one of our best turnouts, but that's very important, as well as our school and community campaign is going on right now. It does take the support of the community, so we invite you to support us at SuffolkEducationFoundation.org. And you can click on the support us link and see how to support us there. As well, thank you to the Suffolk News Herald for being our media sponsor for this event and providing us some advertising, especially on their email newsletters every day. And so with that being said, we'll come back to our panelists this evening. And, you know, getting back to the interview, what is one of the most powerful tools that a candidate can bring to an interview? Katie, you know, when we were talking about this earlier, I thought you brought up one, and maybe this will springboard everybody else, but is bring an extra copy of your resume. Because even though they may have a copy of it or they may have printed it off, there's probably a dozen other things going on their desk. It helps them just to have it at their hands.
Absolutely. Right now, we will open up a position and have between 20 and 120 applicants for one position at times. So bringing a copy of your resume, offering that to the interviewer, making sure that you're prepared. I would say, you know, not only doing your research and creating questions to practice, but also creating questions for the interviewer, because the interview isn't just about will you fit into the position, it's will this organization work with you? Are you the right fit, and are they the right fit for you? So you're interviewing too. You can think of it that way, and that might give you a little more confidence as well, that you're not just the only one being interviewed. I think it's really important to, you know, think about your qualifications. And, you know, Libby mentioned they might not exactly align. There might be something that you can bring into the conversation that you've done. So think outside of the box. Think about your experiences. You know, if you haven't had a ton of jobs before, the YMCA is one of the largest employers of teenagers and first-time employees. So you might not have a lot of work experience, but you still have life experience. You've had challenges that you've had to overcome, whether they be in school or in your personal life. Don't be afraid to bring those types of experiences up. Don't just focus on work. So, you know, be prepared in those types of things. Doing your homework, making sure you know about the organization, you know, sliding in there, you know, for the YMCA, our mission and our values are so important. So when an interviewee slides in about our mission and how they align with that mission and what they would do to help us build that mission, or how their values align with our values and give specific examples about that, I can tell that they've done their research and they've really thought about how much they could make this position work and what they could do to make the position better. You know, I think the other thing is have a plan. So whether it is being a lifeguard for the summer, which you should be preparing for right now, certification classes, being prepared in that manner. You know, if you want to be a lifeguard in May, there's the chance of you applying in May and getting the job and getting certified in May is very slim. You need to do that a few months in advance. So being prepared in that manner, but also saying, you know, I'm going to be the best lifeguard that you have. And this is why. I am going to give the best customer service. I am going to make sure that I am helping keep that pool so clean. I am making sure that this is going to happen while I'm on duty. Or at a higher level as a director. This is my 30-day plan. In the first 30 days, I will be meeting my staff. I will be, you know, evaluating policies and procedure and having a plan and telling them exactly what your goals are, and hoping that they align with their goals, and asking them what are your goals, and how can I better your company or your organization. So coming prepared with that type of research and that type of line of questioning, I think is very impressive to an interviewee and an interviewer. And then just again, making sure that you're confident in yourself. It's okay to be nervous. We all get nervous, but making sure that you have the confidence of, if this really is the job that you want, and this is a career path that you might be interested in, and it aligns with what you want to do, that's confidence. You need to express that and demonstrate that. And again, it's okay to be nervous, but at the same time showing that you have what it takes to do this job. So I think that those things are really important, to be prepared and be organized and be confident.
Well said.
Thank you.
Any other tools or things that need to be brought with them into the interview?
I think that knowing how you're going to answer the tell me about yourself question, which is likely the very first question you're going to be asked, some version of that, like that's your opportunity to lay out your case for why you should be hired. So it's also your opportunity to say, these are the things not like this, but these are the things I want to talk about in the interview. So because if you bring them up, then you open the possibility for follow-up questions. So make sure that the stuff that you want to talk about yourself comes out in that question. So you don't get to the end of the interview and realize that you forgot to tell them about how you are president of SGA and that's your best quality. So you really have to plan ahead of time, what is it that you want them to know about you, and practice saying that answer first, so that the rest of the interview you've said what you needed to say.
Well, and something that you guys are kind of saying that hasn't really been said, but I have counseled people on is, kind of remember that you're putting on a monologue or your own best show. And, part of preparation is practice. So, that 30-second commercial, be able to say it clearly, concisely, without a bunch of ums. The stories that you want to tell, again, be able to tell them concisely and have that plan that you want to make sure is pointed out on your resume. All those things make a difference, and it takes practice. So take advantage of mock interviews, rehearse with family members, and ask your family members to be critical of you. And then one other thing, and I would love to get feedback from you all on the etiquette of this, but I think one important thing not to leave an interview with is kind of what's next. Don't be afraid to ask, what's the timeline? Is it okay to follow up? If you do continue the process, what are the next steps? I've always felt bold enough to always ask that, whether I was in my first interview or my third interview for a position. Modern day etiquette may dictate otherwise, but please share.
Ask it.
I would absolutely ask. As an interviewer, I usually provide that information at the end, but if I were to forget, I would want someone to ask. With that being said, I think it's appropriate to follow up via email or call with a thank you or a follow-up. I do think that there is a point though where 2, 3, 4 emails may be a little excessive. So, keep your thank you to one, and the interviewer will get back to you.
Any feedback on handwritten thank yous versus emails versus, God forbid, text? I'm not much of a texter, but anyways, sorry, my personal opinion came out there, but what are your all's feedback on promptness of thank yous and what's best, what's most appropriate?
I would prefer one over not receiving one at all. So any of the 3 work for me. Obviously the email is probably the best bet, just because a handwritten thank you, unless you can hand deliver it to the organization and get it in their hands, they may not get it for a few days. And the text is a little impersonal. But I would rather get one of the 3 than get none at all.
Ditto. I feel the same way.
So I know you said one, Katie, but I've also, I can say on a personal note, I got one because I did the email and the handwritten note. I got a call back for an interview because of my handwritten note. And one truth that comes out in handwriting that doesn't necessarily come out in email is you can kind of get enthusiasm, emotion, many of those things come out in the way somebody, you know, writes their handwritten note or some of the phrasing that goes into it or the extra swish they add to their name or any of those things. So I'm gonna kind of just do a round robin before we end up here because we're coming up on 7:30, and I try to be cognizant of everybody's time. But one last piece of advice that you guys want to share, or any other comments, as people, as we end this evening. Libby, we'll start with you.
Why, thank you. I think the biggest thing is to not to take action, do something. Like, you're not going to be able to get hired unless you go find opportunities, to apply for. So you won't get a job unless you apply for a job. And talk to people. So if you have ideas of what you want to do with your summer or with your career, like, every person you meet, doesn't matter who they are, ask them, do you know anyone who works at the YMCA? Do you know anyone who knows anything about being a lifeguard? Whatever your career question is, ask everyone you meet about that, and then do something with the answers that you get, because you will get helpful answers.
Richard, we'll go to you next.
Well, I think for a young adult, it doesn't matter what job you have. I think having a job is important, but if you study that your position of your job and your team leaders and the manager, ask questions, because you never know what you're going to do in the future. Because you may be a manager, you may be an entrepreneur, you may be a business owner. And I'm gonna tell you personally, I don't really know a lot, but I ask a lot of questions. And by asking a lot of questions, I learn a lot about what to do, what not to do, the process and the procedures of a business, and it just opens all the new ideas for you. I mean, for a younger person, I think, ask questions, ask why. Like, hey, why do you do this? You never thought of it. We do this and this. McDonald's has a process and procedure. Chick-fil-A has a process, and by learning that, you can implement those things into your other part of your life, your personal life, your academic life. So I think asking questions, not be afraid to ask questions, but also, like you said, do research. Don't want to ask like a crazy question, the answer, but things that you never thought of. But for me, it has gone a long way. Just asking questions for people, and that shows initiative that you care about the business or the position you're being hired for. Because it's interesting. I even go back to my previous employers, because you're intuitive. And ask the question, hey, I'm getting a new position or something, getting advice about this. Like, they know I'm a question answer. I mean, I always ask questions, and be able to pick the phone up and ask them. It's amazing, because I think owners, entrepreneurs, they love to answer questions and help people. And I think I learned that from them, because they're always offering to help me in the past. So I'm just paying it forward. When people call me up, I'm like, listen, what can I do? I don't know the answer, but this is the person you need to talk to. And then that helps. Having that relationship aspect of it with your past employers.
Katie?
I think my best advice at this point would be, find something that you're going to enjoy doing. Find something that you're not going to go into work every day dreading going to work. I can't imagine that. I've never had a job like that, thankfully, but I know many, many people who have. And so think about it critically before you even apply for the position. Do I like working with children? If I don't, I probably shouldn't be a camp counselor. If I don't like sitting out in the hot sun during the summer, I probably shouldn't be a lifeguard. But if I really love helping people learn how to become fit, and work on their wellness journey, maybe I could be a wellness coach. If I am very good interpersonal skills and relationship building. Maybe I could work at the front desk, and I'm using YMCA examples, obviously, but find something that you're really going to enjoy. Now, as a young adult, many of us, myself included, I had no clue what I was going to do. I had a pathway, and it wasn't the pathway that was meant for me. And so I had to find something else. So it doesn't have to be your career, your lifelong career, but make sure that it's something that you're going to enjoy going to every single day. And don't apply for positions. I know sometimes the dollar signs are very attractive and appealing. I know sometimes the titles are prestigious, and I'd love to have the title of that. But make sure it's going to be something that you love and that you enjoy going to every single day, because otherwise it's not going to be something that you enjoy, and it's easier to learn and grow in a position that you're enjoying yourself in. And yes, there are always going to be hard days, there's always going to be challenges, but you learn from those things, you grow from those things, and hopefully it just makes it even better and an even more passionate job for you. So think about that when you are applying for a job of, is this going to make me happy?
So I'll tack on to that one last thing. In all these situations, we're talking about going to work for organizations or people or whatever it may be. I don't want to limit us or live inside that paradigm. They're don't be afraid to take advantage of opportunity, and as Richard said, take risk. I get frustrated every time it snows that I don't see any kids walking up and down the street with a snow shovel, charging $10 a driveway. We're getting ready to have everybody head back to work. And so there's going to be lots of dogs that have been walked 3 and 4 times a day that, people are going to be looking for people to walk them 3 or 4 times a day. So, there's opportunity there. As you said, Katie, plan. And I know the Y teaches babysitting classes, as well as the Red Cross did. So, become a certified babysitter and stand out in your neighborhood, and don't be afraid to print up flyers or, create something that goes out on your parents' social media to let them know that you'll walk dogs, you'll babysit, you'll cut lawns, whatever those may be. When we get those windstorms and those thunderstorms, get out there and ask if you can pick up sticks in people's yards. I think there's all sorts of, if you ever go to Richard's Young Entrepreneur Show, there are young people that just amaze the dickens out of me. I tell everybody about, is it Max that does the little sewed up bags for the grocery bags?
Oh, that's not Max. I know the kid. I see his face.
Zach?
Zach.
Something like
Zach. I think he started at 9 years old with his grandmother. Yeah. And he's 12 now.
I think I think there's all sorts of opportunities out there that people really can take advantage of. I really appreciate you guys being a part of this webinar this evening. We've got our last webinar next week, and that's on finances, which I'm sure everybody who's trying to figure out how to make that $1 million, being that I don't think any of us on here won that lottery ticket that was won in Suffolk. So, so that's our last one. Please be sure to sign up for those. This will also be available on YouTube and Suffolk Education Foundation website if you want to share it, or if you want to watch it again later. And just to thank a few more sponsors, thank you to the Ruritons and the UPS store for their sponsorship this evening. That being said, thank you all very much. It was great seeing you guys. Thank you to everybody who participated this evening.
Thank you, Pat.
Thank you.